There was a stretch where my income was higher than it had ever been, and I still didn't feel secure. That confused me more than any slow month ever had. Because when income is low, instability makes sense. You expect tension. You expect pressure. But when income rises and the pressure doesn't reduce, that's disorienting. I remember looking at my numbers and thinking, why does this still feel fragile? That question changed everything. Money and wealth are not the same system. For a long time, I treated them as interchangeable. Higher income meant progress. Bigger months meant I was moving towards something durable. But what I was actually building was a stronger flow engine, not a wealth structure. Income is kinetic. It moves. It responds to effort. It expands when you push harder. Wealth is structural. It changes how exposed you are. It changes how reactive your life feels to volatility. And my life still felt reactive. If a month slowed down, I noticed tension immediately. If a deal fell through, I felt it in my nervous system. If revenue dipped slightly, I recalibrated everything around it. That's not wealth. That's high-performing income. If higher income doesn't reduce your fragility, you've strengthened flow, not architecture. That distinction hurt a little when I first saw it clearly. Because I had worked hard. I had optimized aggressively. I had improved positioning, offers, margins. The income system was better than ever, but none of that automatically built permanence. Permanence has to be designed, and I hadn't been designing for it. I had been designing for performance. Performance is seductive. It's visible. It's measurable. It feels like momentum. But performance without retention becomes a treadmill. You run faster. You earn more. You feel busier. And yet, your exposure barely shrinks. That was the signal I couldn't ignore anymore. I asked myself something uncomfortable. If my income engine stopped tomorrow, what would still hold me up? Not optimism. Not pipeline. Not reputation. What would structurally remain? The answer wasn't satisfying. There wasn't much underneath the motion. That's when I began separating income thinking from wealth thinking. Income thinking asks, how do I grow revenue? Wealth thinking asks, how do I reduce fragility? Income thinking focuses on expansion. Wealth thinking focuses on reinforcement. The first shift I made wasn't technical. It was conceptual. I stopped seeing surplus income as lifestyle fuel. I started seeing it as structural reinforcement. Wealth begins when income starts funding permanence instead of just performance. That sentence reorganized how I allocated energy and attention. When income increased, instead of expanding commitments immediately, I asked whether that increase reduced exposure. Did it create optionality? Optionality is one of the clearest signs wealth architecture is forming. When you only have income, you feel locked into maintaining it. You can't slow down without risk. You can't experiment without anxiety. You can't think long-term without feeling irresponsible. When architecture strengthens, pressure shifts. You can take calculated risks. You can step back briefly. You can think in quarters instead of days. That horizon extension is not accidental. It's structural. Money affects your lifestyle. Wealth affects your risk profile. When I began noticing that small dips in income no longer triggered the same internal alarm, I realized something was changing. Not because income was massive, but because something underneath it had strengthened. Wealth is what remains when activity decreases. That's the simplest definition I've found. If activity stops and nothing remains, you have income. If activity slows and something holds, you have architecture. Architecture doesn't eliminate ambition. It stabilizes it. You still build aggressively. You still pursue growth, but you're not operating from survival mode. Survival mode is reactive. Architecture mode is deliberate. The difference shows up in decision-making. When income is the only system, every decision feels urgent. Every opportunity feels decisive. Every dip feels personal. When wealth architecture exists, urgency softens. You evaluate instead of react. You choose instead of scramble. That calm isn't laziness. It's structural strength. Another subtle sign is identity shifting. When you're focused purely on income, you see yourself as a generator. Your job is to produce, to convert, to push. When wealth architecture becomes part of your thinking, you start seeing yourself as a constructor. Generators focus on throughput. Constructors focus on foundations. Money rewards throughput quickly. Wealth rewards foundations slowly. Slow reinforcement doesn't create excitement, but it creates resilience. Resilience changes how your life feels. You stop equating every revenue fluctuation with safety. You stop measuring stability by this week's performance. You stop mistaking growth for durability. Because you've seen the difference. Income can grow rapidly. Wealth grows deliberately. Income expands activity. Wealth reduces exposure. Income is motion. Wealth is positioning. And until you design explicitly for that positioning layer, you'll keep chasing bigger months without feeling structurally safer. The entrepreneurs who feel calm at higher income levels aren't calm because they earn more. They're calm because income isn't the only system supporting them. That's the architecture layer. And once you see that difference, you can't unsee it. You stop asking only how to earn more. You start asking how to make what you earn matter structurally. That's when money begins transforming into wealth. Not because the number is bigger, but because the architecture underneath it is finally real.